Hey, what's up everyone? This is NinjaDeathStrike bringing you another TCGO tutorial. Today we're going to talk about deck building, and specifically we're going to talk about the Reshiram Typhlosion Archetype deck. I'm going to show you what would go into a deck skeleton, the basic cards you need for that, and then I'll talk about some tech cards you can choose to put in to help you out, and finally I'll post a video with one of my TyRam decks. You can see how it's supposed to work, what it looks like when it's running well. And so let's look at our cards. Now before we get started, just want to say a quick disclaimer. I've said it before, but I'll emphasize it again. I'm not the final say in what makes a good deck. I'm certainly not the best player online. There's tons of people that are better than me. If you want advice from the real top players in the game, I suggest you check out the Top Cut or sixprizes.com. I'll leave links to both of those in the description. Those are great resources for anyone learning how to play the game. This is just my opinion. You know, honestly, I'm pretty good. I do know what I'm doing, so I feel like my opinion is fairly valid. But as I've said before, if you find something that works for you, just go with it. You know, have fun with this game. You don't have to play the standard decks. You don't have to follow my advice to the letter, but I just wanted to provide a guide for the people looking to get into the competitive game who might need a little bit of help. So let's look at the cards we're going to use, and obviously we're going to start with the fire cards, since most of the cards in this deck are going to be fire. And we have two main lines here. The first one is Reshiram, and for TyRam decks, you almost always want to play 4 Reshiram. Some people I think might play 3 with a revive, but I really recommend playing 4. They're your main attackers, so you know, if you only have 3 of them, if one gets prized or you have to discard one at some point, you're going to be in trouble because you're not going to have a whole lot to fall back on. So I would definitely suggest 4 Reshiram. And my deck usually runs a 4-2-4 line of Typhlosion Prime. This is also optional. Some people run only 3 Typhlosion, and again, they use Revive or Rescue Energy, but I strongly recommend 4 just to maximize your consistency, since you need 2 Typhlosion Primes on your bench to get this deck working how it's supposed to be. So with only 3, again, if one gets prized, it could be a little bit difficult to get those 2 Typhlosions up. So as far as must-have Pokemon, I say 4 Reshiram and at least a 4-2-4 line of Typhlosion. You can even add in some more Quilava if you want to, especially with Trainer Lock being so popular right now. Putting in another Quilava would give you the option to still get up two Typhlosions pretty consistently under Trainer Lock, just a little bit slower. So in addition, we are also going to want at least 1 Cleffa. Now, for Cleffa, I'll pull the card up here so you can see it. You've seen me use this in pretty much every deck. Sweet Sleeping Face, as long as it's asleep, it can't take damage. And then Eek lets you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 6 cards, and then puts Cleffa to sleep. So this is the way to get out of an ideal start. If you start with a hand that's not that great and you want to refresh, you can seek out a Cleffa with either a Pokemon Communication or a Collector, retreat whatever you had to start active, and then Eek, and it'll really help get your bench set up rather quickly. So that's why she's in here. Let's go ahead and take a look at these other cards. I've shown them before, but let's see what they do once more. Reshiram has that awesome 130 HP for basic. Outrage does 20 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on it, and with that big HP, that's a very powerful attack. And then we have Blue Flare, which does 120 for fire, colorless, and you have to discard 2 fire energies. So a strong attack with a pretty big drawback, but that's where Typhlosion is going to come in handy. Typhlosion Prime has a nice 140 HP, means Zekrom or an opposing Reshiram are going to need a double plus power to KO it, which is a little bit harder to get into play than a single plus power. And his Poke Power Afterburner is really what we want to talk about. Afterburner lets you, once per turn, for each Typhlosion you have, attach a fire energy from your discard pile to a Pokemon and then put 10 damage on that Pokemon. So he's with 2 Typhlosion Prime, you're able to reattach those 2 fire energy you had to discard from Reshiram every turn and then just do 120. And the 10 damage isn't a huge deal because it also powers up your Outrage. So if you need to use Outrage, you can also do that. Typhlosion also has a decent attack, unlike a lot of the other supporting primes. Flare Destroy for Fire Colorless only does 70, which isn't a lot of damage, but the effect is quite nice. Discard an energy card attached to Typhlosion and discard an energy from the defending Pokemon. So you get a guaranteed energy discard, and again, it works because you have Afterburner, so you can just reattach your energy while you're burning away theirs. And if they're running something like a double colorless or, special energy types, this can be a really great attack. And Typhlosion actually makes a decent backup attacker if you need him to. So that's going to do it for the must-have Pokemon we need. Let's look at the needed trainers next. And we'll start with our supporters. It's generally when I'm building a deck, I always do Pokemon first, supporters second, items third, and then my energy. So for our supporters, the first one we want is Collector, and we want 4 of them. Again, I've mentioned this before in another tutorial, but Collector is great for getting your bench set up and going. It lets you choose 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. And so ideally you want this in your hand on turn 1, and what you want is probably a Cyndaquil active. Sometimes a Reshiram is okay. If you have a Collector, a Reshiram start isn't that bad, but the problem with having Reshiram active on the first turn is it has 2 retreats, so if you need to get to Cleffa to Eek, you can't usually do that on the first turn. So it's usually a better idea to have something with a 1 retreat cost active on your first turn. Now, when you play this early in the game, you always want to get 2 Cyndaquil. The reason being is catcher. Anyone who knows TyRam is going to know that Cyndaquil is going to be the biggest target, so if you play down 2 at the same time, it prevents them from being able to kill both on the same turn. Then the other card is kind of going to depend on what you need and what you play. If you play Ninetales, then usually Cyndaquil, Vulpix is a pretty standard opening. Again, if you need to Eek, getting Cleffa is also an option. Or if you got a bunch of basics to start, you can get a Reshiram going right away. So I would always recommend getting at least 2 Cyndaquil on the board, though, as quickly as you can. So after Collector, now we want some more draw supporters. And in my TyRam decks, I usually run 4 Professor Oak's New Theory. And there's a reason for this. TyRam, especially with Ninetales, tends to burn through cards very, very quickly. And with Professor Oak, if you have a big hand, you can shuffle it back into your deck and then only draw 6. So this serves as kind of a makeshift way to put cards from your hand back into your deck and helps keep you from decking out. So it's also great to have a lot of hand refreshers. I prefer Professor Oak to anything else, including Juniper, Sharon, or Sage. I think it's probably the most solid choice for draw support, and that's why I run 4. I would recommend at least 3, though. Next, we're going to put in a couple of Noble Victories cards. I'm going to go with 2 N. N, each player shuffles his hand into his or her deck and then draws a number of cards equal to the remaining prizes they have. This can be a really devastating card if your opponent has a fast deck like Zekrom. If they're down to only 2 or 3 prizes when you play this. They're going to get a tiny hand that isn't going to give them a whole lot to work with, and you're still going to be able to draw 5 or 6 cards. So it can work, if you play it right, it can work as a Professor Oak and cripple your opponent. I'm only going to put 2 in this deck. I actually haven't built TyRam with the Noble Victories cards out yet, so I might change this, but I'm just going to start with 2. TyRam does tend to be a pretty quick deck and take prizes pretty consistently, so I don't want more than that because I don't want to get stuck with one later when I only have 3 prizes. Still, since TyRam's so solid that once you get that set up, you don't need cards from your hand, I can see playing a bigger count of N because it doesn't matter if you're only drawing a couple of cards. You don't need as many because you're already set up. You can get the energy from your discard pile, and you don't need to play down any new Pokemon. So it's certainly possible to play up to 4 Ns in a TyRam deck. I'm going to stick with 2 though. That puts me at 10. I would recommend at least 12 draw supporters in any deck. I usually play more than that, but an absolute minimum of 12. So the next card I'm going to add is this Engineer's Maintenance. This is a kind of interesting choice. I think a lot of people don't play this card, and for good reason. Normally discarding your energy is not a good idea, but with TyRam, the energy in the discard pile is not gone. In fact, sometimes it's more usable because occasionally you won't be able to get any energy into the discard pile early to activate that afterburner, and this can help you do it. So I'm going to play a 2 count of these. Some people play as many as 4, but I'm going to go with 2. And then, let's see, a lot of people play Sage, and it's definitely a good choice. I really don't like discarding the 3 cards though, especially because I find a lot of times where there's at least 3 cards I want out of that 5 you draw, and you're stuck discarding something that you would like to hang on to. So I'm not going to play any Sage, but it is certainly an option. Instead, I'm going to go with Sharon, just the straight up draw 2. And I just like being able to draw 3 cards and keep them all. So this is going to be my supporter set. Again, there is a lot of option for variation here. Juniper sees quite a lot of play in TyRam. Again, Engineers Maintenance could see more. You could see some people play as many as 4 Sages, so you need to play around with it, find out what works for you. The only ones I would really strongly recommend are the 4 Collectors and the 4 Professor Oak. So next, let's go to our energy. And how many energy do you want in this deck? The nice thing is you don't need to run a whole lot because you're able to get it all back from the discard pile. It means that each energy is going to go further than it would. So I'm going to choose to play 12. I'm going to go with 10 fire to start. Oops. Well, 12, I don't know. Actually, maybe I'll do 13. I'm going to go with 10 fire and 3 rescue energy. Rescue is really great because it can let you get a Reshiram back since they're your only attacker, and it can also save your Cyndaquils if they're getting picked off early. So I like to run a bit of rescue, but it is certainly optional. You can choose to run straight up fire. You could also run a couple of double colorless energy just for retreating these guys, since they both have that 2 retreat cost. DCE is basically a free retreat of your choice. You could also run a rainbow if you play Kingdra, and I'll talk about that next. So here's kind of a basic skeleton. Actually, I'll take these rescue energies out since they're not mandatory. Oh, and I've got to do items too. I forgot. All right, let's talk about items. Rare candy is a must. You need to get those stage 2 Typhlosions into play as fast as possible. So rare candy is a must-have. I would recommend 3 minimum. It is perfectly all right to go with 4. I've just found with 4 I tend to get clogged up with them when I don't need them, so I stick with 3. PCOM 4, just because it's a really great card and one of the best Pokemon searching tools in the game. Finally, let's go to Super Rod is an option, just as a one-of. Again, it'll help you keep from decking out, and it will put some of those cards that get knocked out back into your deck. So we go for a Super Rod. Some people play Revive. This is certainly a viable option in the deck. It can get your Reshurums back at full health for nothing. It can get a Cyndaquil back after it's been knocked out. I find I don't normally have room for it, so I'm going to leave it out. We want some Junk Arms, of course. I play 3. You can play 4 if you want to, especially since discarding Fire Energy isn't a big deal. But I usually play 3, again, just because I don't have room for 4. I would like to be able to fit 4 in, but I find that I normally can't. And I also play 3 catcher. I like the high catcher count. It really comes in handy for taking out things they're trying to set up on the bench. And so these are the recommended trainers. There are some more options. You can add more trainers if you want. And so one of the biggest options is to go with a plus power. A plus power lets you do 10 more damage, and that means that Reshiram is able to OHKO Zekrom, opposing Reshiram, Kyurem, and anything else with 130 HP for 1 plus power. It also gives you the option to double plus power and hit for 140 on a lot of things, so it's a really solid option, and I would definitely recommend having a few if you don't have another way to increase your damage, but we'll talk about that when we get to techs. Eviolite is also an option, the new card. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is basic, it reduces damage by 20, so basically it gives Reshiram 150 HP, which is crazy. It makes him a lot harder to KO and kind of reduces the effect that Afterburner is going to have, since you can Afterburner and still be, at basically full health. So that's an option that I have not even tried out yet. Energy Retrieval, I've seen a couple people play this, but I wouldn't recommend it just because it's not that great. Your energy in the discard pile doesn't really affect you. So you could also, Max Potion is an option since you can get your energy back. Certainly you could try it as a one-of. And I think that will do it. Yep. Switch. Some people play one switch as well, which can come in handy. I just don't have room for it, so I haven't included it, but it's certainly playable. So now let's talk about techs. This is going to be our basic skeleton. Your deck should include most of these cards in pretty similar numbers. But you'll see we only have 53 cards. So that means we have 7 cards to kind of play around with. And there's several options for what you can put into this deck to make it do different things. Let's talk about the most common option first. And the most common option is going to be Ninetales. This was really popular in the deck before Catcher came out. It's kind of lost some of its luster since Catcher, because Ninetales makes easy Catcher bait. But the deck would normally run a 2/2 Ninetales line, and you would use Ninetales to burn through your deck and get all the cards you wanted really quickly, and then get set up much faster than you would normally be able to. If you play Ninetales, you're probably going to want to play a few more Fire Energy, since you need to have them in your hand to discard. And it also means that you could afford to play less Engineer's Maintenance and more of something else, since you already have something that needs to discard Fire Energy. Having 2 things that need to discard it might not be that great. Another option is a Kingdra line. You can play Typhlosion with Kingdra. So let's look at Kingdra real quick. Now some people just go with a 1/1 line, that being 1 Horsey and 1 Kingdra Prime. And what this does is it's basically a substitute for plus power. If you have Kingdra on your bench, you can add 10 damage to anything every turn, so it's like having a free plus power every turn, and that's really amazing. The main issue with this deck, with running the deck like this, is that it makes it a lot slower. Now you need 2 stage 2s. You should still always focus on getting your Typhlosions up first, unless there's, an easy opportunity to set up a Kingdra, but generally, it's a little bit clunkier. If you can get it set up, though, it's awesome. Like, you can just take prizes a lot faster thanks to Kingdra's help. It would also be possible to run an even thicker line, doing like a 2-1-2 Kingdra line, and that would increase the consistency a little bit more. If you are playing Kingdra, though, you absolutely must have 4 rare candies, because now you have two different stage 2s that need to set up, so you need to bump up that candy count. The final option as far as Pokemon go is pretty quirky, but can be surprisingly effective, and that is Bellsprout. Not Victory Bell, Bellsprout, and I'll show you why. Let's see, where is he? Here he is. Alright, Bellsprout. Now, the reason we have Bellsprout is because of his first attack. Inviting Scent. Switch the defending Pokemon with one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is like a catcher, only in attack form. And the reason this is used is solely for Trainer Lock decks. With a Trainer Lock deck that has either Vileplume or Reuniclus, you can't use your catchers, and they generally play Pokemon that have 130 HP, so without a plus power, which is locked off by trainer, you can't kill any of their stuff, and basically they just keep moving the damage off of their active every turn and healing it off, and you can't take any more prizes after they get set up. So what Bellsprout does is, once that happens, you send him out, and then you use him to drag something up that doesn't want to be active, namely Vileplume or Reuniclus. Put them into the active spot and force your opponent to either burn energy retreating or leave him stuck out there while you have the opportunity to attack. Or if you're playing a Gothitelle deck, you can even play trainers, because Gothitelle has to be active to initiate that trainer lock. So this is a tech just against trainer lock decks, but it is a very effective one. And if you play Bellsprout, you definitely want to play Rescue Energy. At least 2, probably 4, because obviously, Bellsprout has 40 HP. Once they retreat, they're going to come up and knock it out, and you might need it again. You're going to need to use it a couple of times to just keep dragging up that supporter until they can't afford to retreat it anymore. Then you can knock it out and break the back of their deck. So with Bellsprout, you need to play some Rescue Energies, and you should probably have a couple of plus powers still. If you play Kingdra, you don't need the Bellsprout, and you don't need the plus powers because it's built in. Those 130 hit point attackers are okay to deal with if you have a Kingdra in there, because you can Spray Splash for 10 and then still take them out with Reshiram. So it's kind of a toss-up between the two. Now, you can use any combination of these cards. You need to play around, find out what works for you, what you think is consistent, and what plays to your style. So now I'm going to show you a video of a Typhlosion build I have. This is pre-Noble Victory, so I don't have any of the new cards in, but it was a match where things went really well. It perfectly showcases what the deck's capable of, and I'll talk about what I'm doing and why during that video. So that'll start here in just a second. Hang tight. Alright, so here's a match I had quite a few weeks ago. Like I said, before Noble Victories is out. The name of my TyRam deck is Top Gun. You can see by the little type indicator up there, I was trying out the Kingdra build with this one. I don't remember if I actually got Kingdra into play in this match or not. I guess we'll just have to see, but I just remember that this match went really, really well from my side of the field. I don't think it's super competitive just because I set up so quickly, but it's a really great example of how this deck works. So let's see. And I recognize this guy. I think I had just traded with him or something, so said hey to him when we started. I lead a lone Cyndaquil, which is not too bad as long as he's not running Zekrom deck, which means he can kill me in one hit. But I have, you see down there in my hand, excuse me, see down there in my hand I have a collector, so I will be able to get my bench set up first turn, which is ideal. I'm going to pick Tails, but unfortunately I don't get to go first, so I'm going to be a little bit behind. And he's going to lead 2 Machops, so possibility of a Machamp Prime here. He gets the attack. First one only does 10, and I'm going to lead with a collector right off the bat, just like I said. So I do have a Cyndaquil already down, and so I'm going to choose only to get 1 more since I'll have 2, and the rest of my hand is pretty bad. Nothing that's really going to help me, so I decide to grab Cleffa, and you see I was running a 1-1 Vulpix line here, so I go ahead and get my Vulpix as well. And this is a pretty good start for me. I've got Cleffa out to get my hand going, and I've got 2 Cyndaquils and a Vulpix on the bench. So my next priority is going to be probably to try and evolve that Vulpix. If I can get a Ninetales up, I'll be able to draw through my deck a lot faster. And hey, look at that, I draw into it with Eek. So this next turn is going to be really solid. I also got a Quilava, so I'll be able to get that up. And there's a possibility I could get into a Typhlosion if Roast Reveal goes well. So he's got a Machoke on turn 2, so it looks like he got a pretty good start as well. And Machoke's attack is just going to destroy Cleffa very quickly. So he goes up on 1 prize lead right off the bat, and that's going to be a little bit troublesome because he got started a little bit faster than I would have liked. I would have liked the opportunity to Eek a few more times, but you know, you don't always get that. So at least I got a good hand with the 1 Eek I did get, and now I draw into some options with Roast Reveal. I've got that Professor Oak there. I could use that to refresh my hand and try to get something else. Since I was forced to put one of my Cyndaquil active, I'm going to put a 3rd one down onto the bench, and then I'm going to Professor Oak. I'm looking for a Rare Candy and a Typhlosion here. I get the candy, there's the Typhlosion, so this is just perfect. Going to be able to get a Typhlosion Prime into play on this turn, and the reason I Rare Candy, that's a mistake. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't go for the Rare Candy, that's right. There's a glitch where if you put down a basic onto your bench and you have another of the same card in play, you can Rare Candy on the first turn it's down, which you're not supposed to be able to do. So luckily, I didn't do that here. That would have been kind of embarrassing. Sometimes I forget, and I Rare Candy before I'm technically allowed to. So anyhow, Cyndaquil bites it, but now I can Rare Candy, get into Typhlosion Prime. I can go ahead and Roast Reveal. That's going to put my 2nd Fire Energy into the discard pile, and I draw into a 2nd Typhlosion Prime. So this is awesome. My opponent put down that Phanpy, so that means he's most likely playing a Donchamp deck that uses Machamp Prime and Donphan Prime. Those can be pretty fun decks, but they're a little bit slow in the current format. So I'm going to go ahead and Pecom here. Going to grab my Horsey now that I've got 2 Typhlosions set up. I should be good to go, and I can Junk Arm next turn to get that Rare Candy back, and then by the next turn I'll have Kingdra Prime into play, and I'll be fully set up. So I use Collector here. I grab the rest of my Reshiram. I'd like 1 more down on the bench just because I've got room for it now. It's not going to hurt me too much to put down a 2nd one, and it means I'll be able to send them out right away if the first one happens to get knocked out. So since I have those 2 Fire Energy into the discard pile, I can use Afterburner and attach both of them to my active Reshiram and then fire off a Blue Flare for 120 damage. So you can see right here how solid this deck is. I mean, I'm at the point now where I don't need to draw any more cards. Like, I'm set. He can do whatever he wants, make me discard energy, you know, it's not going to matter. My hand size doesn't matter. That's why playing N would not be a big deal. You know, you don't need your hand after you get set up. So this deck is very self-contained. It's very good at managing its resources and getting the most mileage out of each of those resources. And you know, if everything works out how it did in this match, it's really hard to beat. So he evolves here. He doesn't have Donphan Prime, he shows me. This is a bad Donphan, and it's going to take 3 energy to do anything, which is not gonna, he's not going to have the chance to do that, because I'm going to smack him with another 120 damage attack here. And I think he realized that evolving was a bad idea, so I told him he could undo it. I think he might do that. Yeah, he takes back his energy, and then he's gonna, yeah, take back the Machop, take back the Donphan. So now, thanks to PCGO's wonderful quirks, we have a face down on the card sitting there. I have no idea what it is, just assuming that it's a Phanpy. And he puts a fighting energy onto it, and then he revives Machop. So putting that energy on was probably not a good idea, since it's just going to get knocked out again. He's probably going to take that back as well. I think he was kind of new to the game, which is fine. He didn't know exactly what to do yet. So he leaves the Phanpy out there with the energy attached, and I'm just going to take it out this turn. So go ahead and roast reveal just to get one more energy in the discard pile, in case, you know. I'm going to junk arm. Don't need PCOMs anymore since I literally have every card that I want in my hand. Grab that rare candy. That's going to put me into Kingdra Prime. And I'm completely set up by turn 3. So Kingdra is going to add 10 damage to anything I want each turn. I'm just going to go ahead and hit a Machop. You know, it doesn't matter a whole lot since Typhlosion's going to be able to help Reshiram just blue flare everything in the face for the rest of the match. So again, I attach 2 fire energy. That's going to let me blue flare, and that's going to take out this Phanpy. So I tie up the prizes, and he's got no energy and no evolutions on the board, and I'm completely set up. So you see here, I draw a second Cleffa. I was running 2 in this build. The reason being, I was not running a 2-2 Ninetales line. I'm only running a 1-1. I feel like that's the better play. It's nice if you get Ninetales up, but it also doesn't hurt you. If you can't get it up, you know, it's okay. I run a lot more supporters than normal to help make up for that. And it allowed me to run 2 Cleffa, which gives me a better chance to refresh my hand just in case one of them's prized like it was this round. So I really like that. You also see here, I have a Sage. I didn't put any in the deck I showed you guys, but I guess I was trying it out in this one. And it can help you cut through your deck pretty quickly to get to the cards you want. So I've since swapped it out, but at this point I had it in there, and it did work out okay. So I'm now at the point where I don't need to blue flare every turn. I have enough damage thanks to Afterburner where I can just go for Outrage every turn, and I'll be doing 70 damage. So unless he evolves into something, I'm not going to need to blue flare again. I can take out the rest of his cards with an Outrage. So he's got, I think he's on his 3rd Machop now, and he does 10 more damage. It's not going to be enough. You know, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, he's got a Phanpy. Sorry, I can't see because that card's overlapping. He's got a Phanpy out, but in any case, it doesn't matter because I'm able to take it out. And you can see here, now I have that really big hand, so if I was in danger of decking out, I could play that Professor Oak I drew, shuffle all those cards back in, and then just draw 6. So that would allow me to add some more cards back into my deck and help save me from decking out. But don't need to this time, just able to take out his last Machop with another Outrage, and that'll be the game. So tell him good game. And finish the match. So yeah, like I said, not a terribly competitive match, but an excellent example of just what this deck is capable of if it's running smoothly. And it does tend to run pretty smoothly. It's a very consistent deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this will give you an idea of how to play a proper TyRam deck. And I will have some more videos coming your way shortly. I do have Noble Victories decks coming up this week, so stay tuned for that. Take care, guys. Thanks.